So, guys, welcome back to another episode of the
Welcome back.
conversation.
Is this the beginning? Because we've been talking for quite a while. Like
This could be the
having a
middle. This could be the beginning.
this could be the
Welcome
beginning or
back.
the middle.
One of the main things we wanted to get to today, me, myself, good friend and marketing expert Jerry Luna here, is kind of the state of certain things in the world today. So, one of the big
Yes, crazy world out there.
yes.
A lot of interest groups, everybody vying for power.
Yes, absolutely. And we got this war that's going on in Iran and Israel. And it's taking a toll on a lot of people. And I've seen too many TikToks and stupid stuff going on because people don't know how to take things seriously these days. I don't know if you've seen any of those TikTok
No, no, I'm
to
not on
um,
TikTok.
oh they have I don't know, basically the U.S. military guys, doing parachuting exercise and they're filming themselves and talking about, we're coming in and whatever, just different things. And I guess my wife is on that side of TikTok, so she gets to show me, hey, look at this, and I get a good laugh for the day, whatever. To really find some kind of humor in a really perilous situation. Right?
Yeah,
People
and
are
maybe
dying.
this is yesterday's news in a way too, because like there's already ceasefire. They already came to the table. We already bombed them.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
there
So
there were signs from the Iranians that they wanted to de-escalate. Like they got to save face, right? So like so as you all know, the U.S. bombed Iran. There was a strike on Fordow, Fahans and another facility with the express goal of destroying the enrichment capabilities of the country. And obviously, there was retaliation. There was retaliation, on part of Iran attacking military bases in Qatar. But ahead of the strikes, against the base, Iran let the U.S. know, hey, we're retaliating. 12 bombs were dropped on Iran. We're going to send 12 missiles, to the base. So they gave the U.S. the coordinates. They told them when and where they were going to get stricken, right? So
mhm.
if the goal was really to, kill American soldiers, then they would have gone for, they would have gone for the kill. But
Right, right,
instead, it was a symbolic gesture of, hey, we're retaliating. They were allowed to save face and say, hey, we were attacked, but we attacked them right back. You know,
right,
but it was telegraphed where these missiles were going to be dropped because Iran doesn't want a prolonged conflict. They actually want to wrap up the conflict as soon as possible. That's why they didn't try to kill any American soldiers. That's why, they told America where the bombs were going to hit. And it was a sign that Iran wanted to de-escalate, right?
mhm.
And this is their playbook. This is Iran's playbook, throughout, throughout the decades, the past few decades since Israel was founded. There's always this posturing, there's always this threat, but you know, the last thing that they want to do is a prolonged conflict that could lead to regime change, which is the ultimate goal, I think, of the U.S. and Israel. Obviously they want regime change. Um, so yeah, Israel wanted the conflict to end fast. Iran wanted the conflict to end fast because Israel can't defend itself, at all. 0%. Like they have missile interceptors, but first of all, they cost, millions and millions of dollars. They cost millions and millions of dollars, and they're not 100% effective. Iran has 1,000 times more missiles than Israel has is missile defense protectors. So in a prolonged conflict, Israel comes out losing. So it's in Israel's best interest to want to end the conflict as soon as possible as well. Same with Iran. Iran doesn't want a prolonged conflict because then the U.S. Becomes more and more involved, or they get bombed,
Yeah,
or they
yeah,
get regime changed. So everybody wanted this to end, and it looks like it ended.
Yeah, no, yeah, that's good. And then, I would say like when it comes to current events, I am not the best person. I'm in the state of my head down. I am locked in and grinding, right? So when it comes to reading this article, I have a few articles that I get to my phone, but reading this article, going on watching the news. I don't do any of that. My algorithm on all social media platforms don't get any current event news because I don't. Facebook doesn't like me because I don't stop when I see that stuff. I
Hmm.
just keep scrolling, so it knows not to show me that. And the same thing with all the other platforms. So honestly, my biggest source of information when it comes to current events is my wife because
Hmm.
her algorithms are set to that stuff. She gets the articles. She sometimes sees the news. She'll tell me, "Hey, there's this accident in Houston." I'm like, "Oh, really?" And then, like,
Hmm.
yeah, don't take this way to work. And then a trucker drives. The trucker had a big accident. I'm like, "Wow." I don't know where I am, but apparently I don't get any of that information. So said that to say, I knew very little about the war and while it was progressing, other than what other sources were telling me, secondary sources, what other people was telling me. Um, and I just, kind of listed accordingly. But this is also something, to me, it was not something new either. There's always been conflict in the Middle East. Iran is always in something. Israel is always in something. Like, America is always in something. So, with
Hmm.
that being said, I was not surprised, and things getting blown out of proportion. Like, nobody wants a World War III, and it has to get to I mean, the Cold War existed. People forget that they were moving missiles off of our coast. Like missiles were like right by us, right? So I mean that existed, and we survived that. And I believe, if you can survive that, nobody. That's a prime direct expression that nobody wants a World War III.
Hmm. I agree.
Nobody wants that. Not even the big wigs, the big powers. Russia don't want one. The U.S. don't want one. China don't want one. So guess what? These big countries are going to step in if they feel like it's necessary in order to prevent such. And the other superpowers are going to let it happen. Everybody,
Hmm.
oh, Russia's going to get involved. No, they're not. No, they're just going
Yeah.
to watch the U.S. tire itself out and try to be the mediator like it always is in certain situations.
Yeah. I'm afraid of the US getting dragged into another conflict, because of Israel. Israel, since they declared independence in 1948, they've been waging war against Syria, Lebanon, and Egypt and its neighbors, Jordan. So, it's quite troublesome, to have, out of nowhere. So, for example, well, Israel attacked Iran, right? Preemptively. They said, hey, they're dangerous. They're so close to a nuclear weapon. And what has Iran been saying for years? Iran signed the non-proliferation treaty. They for decades they've had inspectors in their nuclear reactors. These are world inspectors, UN inspectors. So they're open to the world and their nuclear program, which is a civil nuclear program. So they signed the treaty. They put their name to paper. They let everybody in. This is for decades they've been doing this to show that we this is what we have. We're not pursuing a nuclear weapon. But guess what Israel says? Hey, they're pursuing a nuclear weapon, so they bombed them, And now Iran, they don't want to give up enrichment. They don't want to give up the ability to enrich because in their eyes, they could get attacked out of nowhere. Literally, this is what happened. Israel attacked them
Mhm.
preemptively out of nowhere, right? So their argument is, hey, we have to have the ability to enrich because our neighbors could attack us literally at any time, and even the U.S. can attack them literally at any time. Israel can assassinate people within Iran using drones. So, uh, so the attack on Iran, it's been 5 years in the making. 5 years. And what did they do? They assassinated high-ranking military personnel. They assassinated nuclear scientists and nuclear negotiators that were working with the US. And it's been in the works for years, like setting up an operation like this, like a dedicated assassination within Iranian soil. That takes that takes years of preparation. That's not like a hey, let's next week let's do this big project. No, it takes years to do that. And so it happened, right? An assassination within Iranian soil, and many Iranians were killed. And on top of that, Israel is such an intelligence superpower because they're not a military superpower. The U.S. is what makes Israel strong. But what Israel was doing is okay. So Israel assassinated the top brass of the military of nuclear, and then they went there and they went to the level below the people, like the assistant deputies, the vice directors.
Hmm.
They slipped a note under their door saying that, hey, if you don't cooperate with the Israelis, we're going to assassinate your whole family. So they didn't just murder the top brass. They threatened the lower brass too and said that, hey, if you help the regime, if you don't listen to Israel, if you don't help Mossad, we're going to kill your family. So, like, Israel is terrorizing Iran, attacking them preemptively, assassinating their top people, you know, and then getting the U.S. to bomb their nuclear facilities, which they've been open about how they're not pursuing a nuclear bomb. Tulsi Gabbard, who is the National Intelligence Director of the United States, in a memo in March said that Iran is not pursuing a nuclear weapon. This is from the Director of Intelligence from the United States. With all the knowledge, with all the information the U.S. has, we concluded that Iran does not have a nuclear weapon and does not seek enrichment of uranium.
Hmm.
And what happened? Israel said that, oh, they're 2 weeks away. They're 2 weeks away. We gotta attack them now. Boom. They were assassinated, attacked. But remember, it takes years. It takes years to create a sophisticated intelligence operation like what they did.
Oh yeah, there's approvals and all kind of things that happens in between that time. You don't just say, "Hey, here's the package. Can we?" No, like there it goes through so many hands and so many things to even think is this is an idea? Is this even a smart idea to stir up conflict in this situation? Okay, yeah, I think we can deal with the backlash. And then it goes through another phase. It goes through all these different stages before it even becomes actionable for a specific team. So I definitely see this being the years in the making. What the conflict's about, I don't think we'll ever know. Really, what half the stuff is about, what people are really fighting about.
They
But
say themselves what it's about. They want regime change. They've been talking about it for decades. We want regime change in Iran. That's what they're pursuing ultimately. They're not
well, so I
pursuing
mean,
they're
there,
not
there's this.
pursuing anti-nuclearization. They weren't pursuing a weapon. They didn't have nuclear capabilities. What they actually want is regime change.
But it's a lot deeper than that too. Like Israel and the Middle East. I mean, the fighting has been there since biblical times. And looking at things biblically, Israel, Abraham had two sons. Well, he had more than that, but he had two main sons, right? And it is two wives. Well, technically not his wife, right? His wife, if you're looking at the Christian Bible, his wife got him to sleep with her handmaiden because God said, "You're going to get pregnant." She was old in age, and she laughed. And, they didn't really believe God. So she said, "You know what? Maybe he meant you're going to have a son through my handmaiding." And so she made, her husband sleep with her handmaiden,
Well,
got her pregnant. Then she ends up getting pregnant, and then she doesn't like the handmaiding and her son anymore. And here and behold, it comes down to a point. I mean, if you believe the same thing I believe biblically, it comes down to a point now. Europe nations fighting.
well, here's the thing. The the Jews should actually be appreciative of the Iranians and the Persians, because in ancient during the time of Exodus, or whenever Jews were kicked out of the Levant area, whenever they were they were moved, I believe the history is the Mesopotamians the Mesopotamians attacked the Israelites and they were taken in captivity. And then the Persian king was fighting the Mesopotamians and won that war, won that conflict. And he actually let the Jews go back to Israel. And Benjamin Netanyahu talks about this, about Cyrus the Great, letting the Jews go back to their homeland, because they were enslaved by the Mesopotamians. So Benjamin Netanyahu, the prime minister of Israel, talked about the Iranian people as, as being very grateful for the Iranians for what happened during the time of Cyrus the Great in 2500 BC. So he actually, the Jews actually acknowledge that, the Persians, which are now modern day Iranians, have a great history with the Jews. They should actually be friends. But what Israel is not a fan of is the current Islamic regime, led by the Ayatollah, right?
Yeah,
They chant death to America, death to Israel. This is why we have to destroy them. This is why we need regime change. So this is the crux of their argument, that the current regime is a danger to them, it's a danger to the world. Look, they chant death to Israel. We have to preemptively attack them. We have to change their government, which the US has been doing for many decades at this point.
yeah, no, absolutely. And like I said, politics is a complex thing because you have the folks that see that bigger picture, or they have a big picture view, which is regime change or whatever. And then you have the people that are in it for each individual. What's the word? Each individual that what is the word? Your own personal agenda, each individual agenda. That's the word I'm looking for. Everybody has a different agenda. You have the military's agenda, the United States agenda, Israel's agenda, and then you have this officer's agenda, that officer's agenda, this person,
Well,
and
I don't understand. What I don't understand is why the Israeli agenda suddenly becomes the U.S. agenda. If Israel wants regime change, if Israel wants to bomb Iran, why does that have to become the U.S.'s problem?
I mean, I don't think it's necessarily the U.S. agenda. They may say that, the U.S. says a lot of things and does a lot of things differently. If we haven't learned that by now, they'll say something and then it's completely opposite. Why is it so hard to elect presidents? Because they say one thing and then they get in the office and do something completely opposite, right? So, I mean, that is a U.S. thing, right? So they'll say on the surface, our agenda, I guarantee the U.S. agenda has never changed. It never explicitly said it. When it comes to our involvement with other countries, all we're trying to do is get wealthier and wealthier and richer and richer, right?
Well, I
And,
could tell.
and
I could also say that that the Israel has a lot of influence on the U.S. For some reason. The flags on all these congressmen are waving their Israeli flags in front of all their offices, right? Like Israel's problems are the U.S.'s problems now. One of the biggest lobbying groups in the U.S. is the Israeli lobby group, AIPAC, right? They lobby Congress. They pump hundreds of millions into U.S. elections to put in people that are favorable to Israel. You can't say you're not favorable to Israel in American politics, or you get labeled an anti-Semite. It's like you can't even talk about these things without being called an anti-Semite. And so, for some reason, the Israeli agenda has become the U.S. agenda through all this lobbying efforts, through all this concerted effort at not being called racist, at not being called anti-Semite. The U.S. just passed over 20 resolutions punishing anti-Semitism in the United States, right? Like, no one's doing that for black people. No one's doing that for white people, right? Why do Jews have this special protected class in the U.S. where Israel gets into a fight, well, the U.S. has to bail them out? Israel can't defend himself. We have to provide aid to Israel. We have to give them weapons, guns. We have to support them in their regime change efforts. We have to support them in their war with Syria, Lebanon, Jordan, Egypt. So many years, the U.S. has been influenced by this foreign government, and it culminated in the U.S. dropping bunker buster bombs on Iranian oil.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of crazy to think about, all of this, and it, the closer you get to it, the more research you do. I'm sure, you more enlightenment, but for me, it's just like, I don't think, for me, what happens up there is neither here nor like, as long as it doesn't affect what I'm able to do down there. Now, I'm not sprouting any kind of bigotry to any person, right? So I don't care if you're gonna say I can't say anything about an Israelite or a Jew. I'm not saying anything about anybody. Me and my wife was talking about this because someone said something about the FBI tapping Siri or something about FBI. Oh yeah, be careful because the new AI law in the big beautiful bill, the FBI. Actually, it was my computer guy. That's who said it. The FBI now can go in, and I think it was my wife. They can take your history of Chat GTP or whatever and use that for evidence. So be careful what you tell Chat GTP. Basically,
Oh wow.
ask Chat GTP how to make a bomb, basically, right?
How
So
did
I'm
they know
like,
I was looking to
but
make a
I'm not
bomb?
like I'm not doing any of that anyway. So why do I care what the FBI can do? The FBI shouldn't be on my case anyways.
Yeah.
If the
Actually,
FBI has a case
that's
against me,
interesting.
it's probably there's something I'm doing. Why the FBI is
I heard that the FBI can also track disruptions in your Wi-Fi signal throughout your house. So, for example, if you're standing in a room where there's Wi-Fi signal, the Wi-Fi signal will kind of go around you or interact with you. So the
Mhm.
FBI can know where exactly in your house you are based off of the Wi-Fi signal. Isn't that fascinating? The
Wow,
the technology that they have,
that's pretty
to like,
insane.
oh, you're being tracked because you have your
So
Wi-Fi. Like
you're
they could
trying to.
track your physical movements because of the Wi-Fi. Isn't that
I
insane?
know, I know we're talking about Israel and the war and stuff, but with that piece of knowledge, they're also telling me aliens don't exist with that technology that you have. I mean, again, that's a whole nother episode, guys. We don't want to dive into the alien thing too much,
Oh, I'm happy
but
to get into that.
right. Awesome. Well, I mean, definitely some great topics that we discussed and kind of went over. I mean, yeah, I'm glad this war is over. That's one thing I would say.
I know the 12-day war,
Yeah, I'm happy.
the
You know,
Israel dragging the U.S. into another conflict.
yeah,
Or no,
people
Israel dragging U.S. Yeah, I think I said that
TikTok going
backwards.
crazy, people going viral for a minute. There's a couple people that got famous off of their thoughts and statements on the war off of TikTok. So they
Oh
I guess
yeah,
it's
TikTok.
something.
Yeah, maybe
um,
maybe we should post that too. Maybe let's get
yeah,
famous on TikTok.
yeah, right. Yeah, a couple people definitely got famous on TikTok off of just making comments about the war and different trends. Same thing, different trends will come up. Um,
I mean, it's yesterday's news now, right? Like
yeah,
nobody's talking about it anymore.
right.
Maybe it was more relevant, a relevant conversation a week ago.
Yeah, 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 and it didn't last that long. So yeah. But with that being said, though, I'm just curious to see what this administration is going to do with he ended Trump ended the conflict in Congo as well. Um,
Hmm.
so that's something.
Huge W.
Yeah, that was something that I was very interested and very important. That one wasn't talked about widely too much, but I'm just interested to see how America's approach is to different world conflict. I think we're moving closer and closer to one world government. This administration seems to be pushing towards that. I'm not saying in the sense of right now it's going to happen in our lifetime where like the movies portray it, but I think the United States wants to be the center of something like that and make at least the communication between governments more uniform at the very
Mm.
least. And
You
I
know,
think,
what I'm most concerned about is we're actually in the same exact spot we've been in. Nothing has changed. And the reason is because Iran, after being bombed and attacked and their people were assassinated, do you think they're going to give up enrichment?
no,
In
no,
their
this is
eyes, they're
motivation.
totally justified because their neighbors are attacking us. Everybody's attacking Iran. Like in their
Yeah.
eyes, and they came out and said so themselves. We're not going to give up enrichment. We're not going to give up the ability to enrich uranium because look at what happened. We could get attacked literally at any moment, and a nuclear weapon is the only way that we can protect ourselves. This was Israel's thinking too. Back when they stole the nuclear weapons technology from the US, this was what they were after. If we have a nuclear weapon, no one can mess with us. This is Iran's thinking too. We're getting attacked, our people are getting assassinated on our own soil. If we can't protect ourselves, the only way that we can protect ourselves is if we maintain the ability to enrich uranium. And so they came out and said it. We're not giving, okay, we'll come to the table and negotiate. We won't give up the ability to enrich because everybody's violent against us. We need something to deter this violence. So we're in the exact same position. We're even worse off now because now Iran's not letting nuclear inspectors back into their country. Iran is now distrusting of negotiations with the US because amidst negotiations they could get bombed. Uh,
Hmm.
so I would say we're in the exact same position, if
Yeah,
not worse. We're in a worse position now.
I would say so too. Here's what makes this worse, and look at it on a single person to person conflict scale. Let's take the country out of it for a second. Let's look at each country as a person. You have a friend that constantly gets in a fight with two friends, right? Two friends that let's call them, one is a friend of me and one is a friend.
Let's say our friend Israel is always getting into fights.
Yeah, and get constantly getting into fights, running his mouth, and they have this one person they just don't like.
Yes, they hate.
And
They they
just
they hate
hate
each
this
other. They're
one
neighbors.
person. And they're always fighting. And it's to the point now your friend Israel crossed the line and beat this person down, bloody, stomped, and stomped him out on the ground, bloody, the need ICU. This person was in ICU pretty
Yeah.
much.
Well, the let's say the ICU person, they started beating up our friend Israel. They just started like, "Hey, you beat me up. I'm gonna beat you up," and then they started fighting. And what does Israel do? Oh, I need help. My
Yeah.
my big buddy's gonna bail me out.
Yeah.
And here comes the U.S. Hey, get off of my friend here, even though you attacked him first. And so, it's a good analogy there. That's what it
Yeah,
feels like.
I would say, yeah, I mean, if that's what it feels like, and Israel now getting bailed out by the U.S., okay, let's put this guy in the ICU, put him in a coma. But the problem is, you let the person live. That's ultimately the problem, right? And we
They're
know the
saying
world.
execute your enemies.
We know the world we live in. Obviously, we
That's good.
can't execute, but if you cannot, if you can't, I'm a firm believer. If you can't kill him, don't fight him. Yeah, I have multiple guns in my house. If I can't shoot you, it's not enough. If it's not enough for me to shoot you and get away with it, I won't put my hands on you either. Because it's worth it. Now I'm giving you a reason to come back and plot your revenge against me, and I gotta look over my shoulder. Look over
Yeah.
my I don't feel like
That's what Iran's gonna do. Like they're in a position of we shouldn't give up this ability to enrich uranium because these bullies out here are gonna attack us. And I'm not a fan of Islamism. I'm actually not a fan of Islam, right?
right.
But like I'm also not a fan of just bombing other countries because they get it because Israel wants us to. Just
Yeah.
that says a lot about who
I'm
influences
also
the
not a
government
fan
the
of I'm
most.
not a fan of Judaism either, so I can say it. I'm a Christian. I'm
Amen,
a
brother. Yeah.
Christian.
Why are
So
they rejecting Christ?
they're rejecting Christ, and they think they're constantly coming to Him for help, though. Like,
Exactly.
Jesus, we don't like you. Help us.
I know. They
Yeah.
rejected Christ. In their Talmud, Jesus Christ is boiling in excrement according to the Jewish Talmud. They're their their holy book.
Hmm.
Like
Hmm.
they say the Virgin Mary was a whore in their holy book, you know. They're very anti-Christian, you know.
Hmm.
Judaism is very anti-Christian.
But America is built on Christian values, and it's funny, like the relationship as we talked about. So, I mean, you get to see that a lot of this stuff when it boils down to it, like your religion don't really mean anything. Like your spirituality does, the relationship you have with God does. Like we know that on a spiritual level, like all that stuff. But to other people, they don't care. To other countries, they don't care about any of that stuff, right? They have their agenda and that's it. Israel wants, to get regime change. That's their agenda, and that's it. I mean, they're willing to lie down with dogs in order to get that accomplished. But the problem is, like my mom and grandma used to say, you lie down with dogs, you're gonna wake up with fleas.
The smart grandma.
Yeah, you better be careful what you're doing because the outcome you will not like, right? And it's very dangerous. The game that the U.S., Israel, and Iran is playing is very dangerous for the entire world. A world order is very dangerous. So, but I'm glad
Agree.
that there's some kind of settling that's going on, and I just hope it continues to progress peacefully. That's
Yeah,
all we can
yeah,
hope for.
yeah. Amen, man.
Awesome, man. Well, it's been a pleasure, talking, going over this, guys. I hope this, episode has been great, informative for those that maybe learned something here, or maybe just, you have some
Yeah,
thoughts on it. That's today's news, as Jerry said, but still, drop a comment.
yeah.
Let us
Drop your
know.
comments. We want to hear what you guys have to say. What do you guys think about the conflict in Iran? And
Is it going to keep going, or
yes,
has it ended here? Right? Let us know what you think. And we're looking forward to seeing you guys next week. Thanks for tuning in as always. Till next time, y'all have a blessed week.
thank
Peace.
you, everybody. Peace.